Here's something that's going to mess with your head. You don't need a massive transformation to change your life. You don't need to wake up at 4 a.m., quit your job, or move to another country. What if I told you that getting just 1% better today, just one tiny percent, could completely reshape your future? Most people are waiting for some magical moment to finally get started. They're waiting for motivation, for the right time, for everything to line up perfectly. And while they're waiting, their life is slipping away. Today, I want to talk to you about something that changed everything for me. Stay with me on this one. Years ago, I was stuck, completely stuck. I was working hard, reading books, attending seminars, doing everything I thought successful people were supposed to do. But nothing was changing. I felt like I was running on a treadmill, going nowhere. Then one day I had a conversation with an old mentor of mine who asked me a simple question. He said, "Allan, what did you do today that made you slightly better than yesterday?" I didn't have an answer. Not one. That question haunted me for weeks because it revealed a painful truth. I was chasing big goals while ignoring small progress. I wanted the destination without respecting the journey. And that's when it hit me. Lasting change doesn't come from dramatic overhauls. It comes from tiny, boring, almost invisible improvements repeated daily. 1% better. That's it. That's the whole secret. Not some complicated formula. Not some expensive course. Just a commitment to being slightly less rubbish today than you were yesterday. Sounds simple, right? Almost too simple. But here's the thing. Simple doesn't mean easy. Let me explain why this tiny idea has the power to transform absolutely everything. Let me paint a picture for you. You wake up tomorrow with this fire in your belly. You decide, today is the day. Today everything changes. You're going to hit the gym, eat clean, read for 2 hours, meditate, journal, learn a new language, and finally start that business you've been dreaming about for years. Sound familiar? By noon, you're exhausted. By evening, you're back on the couch, scrolling through your phone, wondering what went wrong. And by next week, you've completely forgotten you ever made those promises to yourself. Here's the thing. This isn't a character flaw. This is human nature. I've spent decades studying human behaviour, watching people in boardrooms and living rooms, and I can tell you with absolute certainty that we are wired for short bursts of enthusiasm, followed by spectacular crashes. We love the idea of transformation. We're addicted to it, actually. But we're terrible at the boring work that makes transformation real. Some of you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. You've got a graveyard of abandoned gym memberships, half-read self-help books, and vision boards collecting dust somewhere in your closet. And every time you fail, you beat yourself up. You tell yourself you're lazy, undisciplined, not cut out for success. But that's not true. Not even close. The problem isn't you. The problem is the approach. We've been sold this ridiculous idea that change has to be dramatic to be meaningful. That if you're not suffering, you're not growing. That transformation should look like a movie montage, sweat, tears, dramatic music, and a completely new person emerging in 90 seconds. Real life doesn't work like that, and when we try to force it, we fail. Over and over again. I know how this feels because I lived it for years. I remember sitting in my office late one night, surrounded by motivational posters I'd bought in a burst of enthusiasm, feeling like the biggest fraud on the planet. I was teaching people about success and communication, while secretly feeling like I couldn't get my own life together. The gap between who I wanted to be and who I actually was felt impossible to close. And you know what made it worse? Watching other people seem to have it all figured out. Social media is brutal for this. Everyone's posting their wins, their perfect mornings, their incredible discipline. And there you are, struggling to get out of bed before 9, wondering why you can't just get it together like everyone else. But here's what I've learned after studying thousands of successful people across dozens of countries. Those highlight reels are lies. Well, not complete lies, but they're not the full story. What you don't see are the years of tiny, unglamorous improvements that made those moments possible. What you don't see is the boring consistency that nobody wants to talk about because it doesn't get likes and shares. The real secret to lasting change isn't sexy. It's not motivational. It won't make a good Instagram post. But it works. And that's what matters, right? Let me ask you something. What's been your pattern? Think about the last time you tried to change something significant in your life. How did you approach it? Did you go all in? Did you try to change everything at once? And how long did that last? I'm not asking to make you feel bad. I'm asking because recognizing the pattern is the first step to breaking it. We keep doing the same thing, expecting different results. That's not persistence, that's insanity dressed up as motivation. The reason most people fail at self-improvement isn't lack of desire. It's not even a lack of discipline, it's a strategy. They're using a terrible strategy that's designed to fail from the start. Think about it this way. If I asked you to run a marathon tomorrow, could you do it? Probably not, unless you're already a runner. But if I asked you to walk to the end of your street today, could you do that? Of course. It's easy, almost stupidly easy. And that's exactly the point. We've been taught to aim for the marathon while ignoring the walk to the end of the street. We've been taught that small steps are for small thinkers, that real achievers go big or go home. But that's backwards. That's completely backwards. The people who actually achieve lasting change aren't the ones making dramatic leaps. They're the ones taking tiny steps so small they almost feel pointless. And they're doing it every single day, whether they feel like it or not. Now here's where things get interesting. I want to challenge something you probably believe deep down. You believe that the size of your effort should match the size of your goal. Big goals require big action. Makes sense, right? Wrong. Completely wrong. Let me give you a different way to think about this. Your brain has two parts that matter here. There's the logical part that sets goals and makes plans. And there's the emotional part that actually drives behaviour. The logical brain loves big dramatic goals. It gets me excited about transformation. But the emotional brain, it hates change. Any change. It sees change as a threat to survival and does everything possible to keep you exactly where you are. This is why willpower fails. You're using your logical brain to fight your emotional brain, and guess what? The emotional brain wins almost every time. It's been running the show for millions of years. It's not going to lose to some fancy goal you wrote in your journal last Tuesday. So, how do you beat it? You don't. You work around it. You make changes so small that your emotional brain doesn't even notice. You fly under the radar. 1% improvement doesn't trigger resistance. It doesn't feel threatening. Your brain goes, oh, that's nothing. That's fine, we can do that. And before it realizes what's happening, you've built momentum that becomes unstoppable. Here's an analogy that might help. Imagine you're trying to boil a frog. I know, a weird example, but stay with me. If you throw a frog into boiling water, it'll jump right out. The change is too dramatic, too sudden. But if you put that frog in cool water and slowly raise the temperature 1 degree at a time, it won't notice until it's too late. Now, I'm not suggesting you boil any frogs, please don't. But the principle applies to your brain. Dramatic change triggers escape. Gradual change goes unnoticed until it becomes your new normal. I had my own aha moment with this years ago. I was trying to write a book and getting nowhere. Every day I'd sit down planning to write for 4 hours. Every day I'd find excuses. Too tired. Not inspired. Not the right environment. The book sat unfinished for 2 years. Then I tried something different. I committed to writing just 1 paragraph a day. 1 paragraph. That's it. Some days that paragraph was terrible. Some days it was 3 sentences that barely made sense. But I did it. Every single day. You know what happened? After a few weeks, 1 paragraph turned into 2, then a page, then several pages. The resistance disappeared because I trained my brain to accept writing as normal. Not as this big, scary, creative effort, but as something I just did, like brushing my teeth. That book became a bestseller, and it started with 1 lousy paragraph. Some of you might be thinking, but Allan, 1% is too slow. I don't have time to wait. I need results now. I hear you, I really do. But let me ask you this. How's the fast approach been working out? How many times have you tried to sprint to success only to burn out before the finish line? The irony is that slow and steady actually get you there faster because you don't quit. You don't burn out. You don't spend months recovering from failed attempts before trying again. You just keep moving forward 1 small step at a time until one day you look back and realize how far you've come. There's a famous question I love to ask people in my seminars. Where will you be in 5 years if you improve just 1% every day? Let's do the math. 1% daily improvement compounded over a year doesn't make you 365% better. It makes you 37 times better. 37 times. That's not gradual improvement. That's transformation. But it doesn't feel like transformation because each day feels normal. Each day feels easy. Each day feels sustainable. And here's the beautiful part. It works in reverse too. If you get 1% worse every day through neglect and bad habits, you don't just decline slowly, you collapse. 1% daily decline over a year leaves you with almost nothing. The compound effect cuts both ways. So the question isn't whether 1% matters, it absolutely does. The question is which direction you're compounding. Are you getting slightly better or slightly worse? Because neutral doesn't exist. You're always moving in one direction or another. All right, enough theory. Let's talk about what this actually looks like in real life. How do you apply the 1% principle to your specific situation? First, you need to identify what actually matters. Not everything deserves your attention. Not every area of your life needs improvement right now. Pick one thing, just one. The area where a small improvement would have the biggest ripple effect on everything else. For some of you, that's health. If you feel terrible physically, everything else suffers. Your work suffers. Your relationships suffer. Your mood suffers. So start there. For others, it's a key relationship. Maybe things have gotten stale with your partner or distant with your kids. Small daily investments there could transform your entire life experience. For others still, it's a skill that could change your career trajectory. Something you've been meaning to learn but never quite got around to. Pick one, not 3, not 5, 1. Second, shrink it until it's laughable. Whatever action you're planning to take, make it smaller. Then smaller again, then even smaller. You want to reach a point where the action is so tiny that saying no would be more effort than saying yes. Want to start exercising? Don't commit to an hour at the gym. Commit to putting on your workout shoes. That's it, just the shoes. Want to read more? Don't commit to a chapter. Commit to reading 1 page, 1 single page. Want to learn a language? Don't commit to 30 minutes of practice. Commit to learning one word. Sounds ridiculous, right? That's exactly how it should sound, because ridiculousness is sustainable. Ridiculousness doesn't trigger resistance. Ridiculousness gets done. Here's the thing most people don't understand. The action itself is less important than the identity you're building. When you put on those workout shoes every day, even if you don't actually work out, you're telling your brain you're the kind of person who exercises. When you read one page every day, you're becoming a reader. When you learn one word, you're becoming someone who speaks that language. Identity drives behaviour far more than goals do. So focus on becoming, not just doing. Third, track it. What gets measured gets managed. You don't need anything fancy. A simple calendar where you mark an X every day, you complete your tiny action. There's something deeply satisfying about not breaking the chain. After a few weeks, you'll do your action just to keep the streak alive. I used this for years with my own habits. I had a wall calendar in my office, and every day I completed my writing, I'd mark a big red X. Some mornings I didn't want to write at all, but I'd look at that chain of X's and think, I'm not breaking this today. The streak became more motivating than the activity itself. Fourth, make it obvious. Don't rely on memory or motivation. Set up your environment so the right action is the easiest action. Want to read more? Put the book on your pillow. Want to exercise? Sleep in your workout clothes. Want to eat better? Put the fruit on the counter and hide the junk food. I've watched people in my studies sabotage themselves with terrible environments while wondering why they can't stick to anything. Your environment is either working for you or against you. There's no neutral. Fifth, attach it to something you already do. This is powerful. Link your new tiny habit to an existing habit. After I pour my morning coffee, I'll read one page. After I brush my teeth, I'll do 5 push-ups. After I sit down at my desk, I'll write one sentence. The existing habit becomes a trigger. It reminds you automatically. No willpower required. Now, what should you avoid? Just as important. Don't try to optimize too early. When you're building a habit, consistency matters more than quality. It doesn't matter if your one page of reading is a struggle or your one paragraph of writing is garbage. You're not trying to be perfect. You're trying to show up. Don't increase too fast. This is where people get into trouble. They start small, it feels easy, so they double it. Then double it again. And suddenly they're back to that unsustainable level that made them quit before. Increase slowly, very slowly. When one page becomes effortless, and I mean truly effortless, add another, not before. Don't skip the hard days. Easy days take care of themselves. Your discipline is measured by what you do when you don't feel like it. Those are the days that matter most. On hard days, shrink even further. If you can't do your one page, do one paragraph. Do one sentence. Just don't break the chain. Now let me be honest with you, because I respect you too much to sell you fantasy. This 1% approach works. It really does. But it's not magic. It's not going to feel exciting most days. There won't be dramatic breakthroughs or sudden transformations that make great stories. Most days, it'll feel boring. You'll wonder if you're making any progress at all. You'll look at people doing big dramatic things and question whether your tiny steps even matter. They matter. I promise you they matter. But knowing that doesn't make it easy. And I'm not going to stand here and pretend it's easy, because that would be lying to you. There will be days when you don't want to do your tiny action. There will be days when life gets in the way. There will be days when you mess up, break the chain, and feel like starting over. Here's what I want you to remember in those moments. You're not building a perfect streak. You're building a sustainable practice. If you miss a day, you haven't failed. You just had a day. Get back to it tomorrow. The only real failure is quitting entirely. I've failed more times than I can count. Seriously, I've started and stopped more habits than most people have ever tried. I've broken chains, missed days, and questioned everything, but I kept coming back. And that's the difference. Let me tell you about a guy I met at one of my workshops years ago. He was overweight, in debt, and his marriage was falling apart. He felt completely overwhelmed by how much needed to change. He tried big transformations before and always crashed. I told him about the 1% idea. Start with one tiny thing. He chose walking. Not running, not gym membership, just walking. 5 minutes a day. Laughably small. That was 7 years ago. Today he's lost 40 kilos, saved an emergency fund, and just celebrated his 20th anniversary. All from 5 minutes of walking that grew into something he never imagined. That's not an overnight success story. That's 7 years of showing up. 7 years of tiny improvements stacking on top of each other. 7 years of trusting the process when results weren't visible yet. Are you willing to play that kind of long game? Are you willing to invest in your future self even when you can't see the returns? I hope so, because your future self is counting on the decisions you make today. Not the big dramatic decisions, the small ones, the ones nobody sees. The ones that don't make for impressive stories but make for an impressive life. So here's where we are. You have a choice to make. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Right now, you can keep chasing dramatic transformations that feel exciting for a week before fading away. You can keep waiting for the perfect moment, the right motivation, the ideal circumstances that never come. You can keep doing what you've always done and getting what you've always gotten. Or you can try something different, something smaller, something almost embarrassingly simple. 1% better today, that's it. That's the whole task. What would that look like for you? What's the tiniest possible step you could take toward the person you want to become? Not the biggest step. Not the most impressive step. The tiniest one. The one that's so small you can't possibly say no. Maybe it's reading one page of that book you bought months ago. Maybe it's doing 5 push-ups before your morning shower. Maybe it's putting your phone down for 10 minutes and actually talking to someone you love. Maybe it's drinking 1 extra glass of water. I don't know what your 1% is. Only you know that. But you do know. Deep down, you know exactly where you need to start. The person you'll become a year from now is being built right now. Brick by tiny brick. Choice by tiny choice. You're already compounding in some direction. The question is whether it's the direction you want. Imagine yourself 12 months from today. What if you actually followed through this time? What if those small daily improvements added up to something extraordinary? What if the only thing standing between you and that version of yourself was the willingness to start ridiculously small? You don't need more information. You don't need another book or course or motivational video. You need to do one tiny thing today and then do it again tomorrow. That's not a big ask. That's the smallest task I could possibly make, and it might just be the thing that changes everything. 1% better. Starting now. Not because it's easy, not because it's glamorous, but because it works. Because you're worth the effort. Because your future self is depending on the person you choose to be today. So what's it going to be?